Hi, this is Lillian, Native Health's Garden Coordinator, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make an herbal salve. This is part 2 of our medicinal plants workshop. Make sure to check out our part 1 video for how to make an infused oil, which you will need to make the salve. To make a salve, you will also need a pot and container for a double boiler. I like to use something that has a small spout for easy pouring later. You'll need a strainer and cheesecloth to strain your infused oil, beeswax pellets or shredded beeswax, vitamin E oil to extend the shelf life of your salve. That is optional, but it's good to have. Clean jars, lids for your jars, and paper towels. Start out by adding water to your pot to make your double boiler. Make sure that the water level isn't so high that it will splash into your oil ingredients. If you get any water into the salve, it can spoil or form mold later on. If you're using a glass container, make sure to place it in the water immediately so it heats slowly along with the water. Drastic changes in temperature can cause the glass to shatter. I forgot at first, you don't want your container touching the bottom of the pot. You can place a lid or scrunched up foil underneath to create some space. Melting your beeswax is the longest part of this process. I found it easier to add it in small amounts and wait for it to melt before adding more. If you add it all right away, it will melt into a large chunk. For this recipe, I'm using 15% beeswax, which I found to be good for Phoenix heat. It will stay solid, but will still spread nicely. 15% is about 40 grams for every 8 ounces or 1 cup of infused oil. I have 16 ounces of infused oil, so I'll need about 80 grams of beeswax. It can be helpful to have extra boiling water ready in case your double boiler is running low. Make sure to take out your container before adding more water. Again, you don't want to get any water in your salve. Melted beeswax can cause burns since it has a very high melting point, around 144 to 147 degrees Fahrenheit. So please do not touch melted beeswax. Since beeswax is solid at lower temperatures, when it's mixed with the oil, which is liquid at room temperature, the mixture becomes more solid. So by changing the percentage of your beeswax, you can make your salve more solid or more soft. If you add too much beeswax, your salve can be hard to spread, and if you don't add enough, your salve can melt when it's hot out. Once your beeswax is melted, you can add your infused oil. Take out your container of melted beeswax and wipe any condensation on the outside of the container. I like to strain directly into the beeswax so none of the oil is wasted, but you can also strain into a separate container first for easier pouring. For this infused oil, I use shigoi or creosote, echinacea root, yarrow, juniper berries, chamomile, thyme, and oregano. In the Medicinal Plants Workshop Part 1 video, I go over some of the healing benefits and traditional uses of these plants, so make sure to check out the video. Squeeze out as much of the oil as you can, and if you have any left in the jar, don't waste it. You can rub that on your skin immediately too. Some of the beeswax solidified when the oil was poured in, so I'm melting it again, but it'll go faster this time. After it's all melted, I'm doing a spoon test to see what the consistency of the finished salve will look like. You can put a spoon in the freezer beforehand, and when you're ready to test, coat the back of the spoon and put it back into the freezer for a minute or two. So here's what it looks like after a minute. If it ends up being too hard, you can add more oil, and if it's too soft, you can add more beeswax. I'm happy with the way this spreads, so I'm going to add the vitamin E oil now. This is optional, but it does help the salve have a longer shelf life since over time salve can go rancid. I'm using vitamin E oil that was made from sunflower seeds, and for every ounce of product you can put 1 to 2 drops of the vitamin E oil. I have 16 ounces of infused oil, so that equals about a half teaspoon of vitamin E oil. And now the mixture is ready to pour into the jars. Make sure to wash your jars before using them and make sure they are completely dry. Also wipe the outside of your container before pouring. Again, we don't want any moisture getting into the salve. A thick-walled glass container will hold in the heat, so you won't need to remelt your mixture. If you're using a thin-walled container, you may need to pop it back into the hot water to remelt, so keep the pot of hot water on the stove. I'm using smaller jars since I will be sharing these with other people, but you can also use a larger jar. I like to cover the jars immediately after pouring so the salve sets evenly and so dust doesn't get in. I also like to keep them on a flat surface and avoid picking them up before they have set. After you're done pouring, it's helpful to wipe out the inside of your container. If you wait until the salve sets inside the container, it can be harder to clean out later. You can see in the clear jars where the salve is already solidifying. Once it's cooled completely to room temperature, your salve is ready. Here it is after a few hours. You can see it's completely solid. And here's what the top looks like. Thank you for watching.